In the beginning, the baby was born. God chose Mary to be the mother of God. Listen to those words. God chose Mary to be the mother of God. And the Word was born, a wordless child. When the baby looked up into the Mother Mary's face, he could already see the cross. And when he looked up at the Father Joseph, the cross was there too. The Mother Mary and the Father Joseph held the baby close. They kept the baby warm. They gave the baby everything he needed to grow. And the baby began to grow. The baby grew and became a boy. And when he was about 12 years old, he went with the Mother Mary and the Father Joseph and all of the people from his village in Nazareth to Jerusalem to celebrate one of the high holy days. After the celebration was over, all of the people from Nazareth headed back out the tall gates back towards home. After a little while, Mary and Joseph noticed that Jesus was not traveling with them. They thought he'd been walking along with friends. When they were sure that he was missing, they hurried back to Jerusalem, and they looked all over for him, in the dark and narrow streets, in the marketplace where they got food, and in the places where they spent the night. They finally looked for him in the temple, and that's where they found him. He was talking with the priests and the rabbis, and when they talked, he was really listening because he wanted to know what they had to say. And when Jesus talked, the rabbis were listening because they were amazed at all that he knew. And then his parents asked him the question that all your parents ask you, and you don't have any of the answers to. They said, "Son, why have you done this?" And Jesus' answer was kind of strange. He said, "Didn't you know I would be in my Father's house?" But they were confused. Wasn't his Father's house with Joseph and Mary where the carpentry shop was in Nazareth? They did not understand, but they would never forget. The boy grew and he became a man. And when he was about 30 years old, he walked into the river Jordan where his cousin John was baptizing people. He walked up to John and he said, "Baptize me." And John looked at him face to face, right in the eyes, and it was as if he saw him for the very first time and he knew who he was. And John said, "You are the Messiah. You're the one we've been waiting for. I can't baptize you. You should baptize me." But Jesus told him, "It was written in the scriptures that John would come before him and prepare the way. Baptize me." And so John lowered Jesus into the cold, dark chaos of the water. And when he rose back up into the light, some of the people who were there said that they saw a dove come down from heaven. And they heard a voice from heaven say, "This is my son. With him I'm well pleased." After that, Jesus walked across the river into the desert, where he would spend 40 days and 40 nights, and he would learn about the work he was supposed to do. When Jesus walked into the desert, he was spending 40 days and 40 nights, and he was going to learn more about his work and who he really was. There wasn't very much food or drink in the desert, and one day he heard a voice call out that said, "Hey, you see those stones over there? Why don't you turn those stones into bread so you can have something to eat?" But Jesus said, "It is written that a man does not live by bread alone." Another time he heard a voice cry out, and it was as if he were standing on top of the temple in Jerusalem. And the voice said to him, "Throw yourself off of the top of this temple and see if the angels will come down and catch you before you hit the stones." But Jesus said, "No, we do not need to test the Lord." And then again, it was as if he could see all the kingdoms of all the world. And the voice said to him, if you'll bow down and worship me, you can be ruler of all these kingdoms. But Jesus said, I am meant to be a king, but not that kind of a king. And the voice left him, and the angels came and took care of him. Then Jesus went back across the river Jordan to begin to do his work. So Jesus came back across the river Jordan, and he started to do his work. But what was Jesus' work? His work was to come close to people, especially the people that nobody else wanted to come close to. Can you see him here, how close he's come to this blind man? When Jesus came close to people, they changed. They could see things that they'd never seen before, and they could do things they had never done before. They became well. Jesus' work was also to teach the people, and he taught them in parables. When it was time for Jesus to become a parable, he turned toward Jerusalem for the last time. It was during the time of the Passover, and there were many people in the city of Jerusalem. Jesus didn't come in the city riding a horse or being held up by soldiers. He came into the city riding a donkey, and it wasn't even his. He had to borrow it. On Sunday, when he rode in, the people waved palm branches at him, which was a sign for kings. On Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, Jesus taught in the temple. In the evenings, he went to the Mount of Olives with his 12 disciples. People watched them go, and they would whisper and say that the Mount of Olives was where the angels were going to gather and rise up to make an army so that they could overcome the Roman soldiers. One day he was teaching in the temple, and he said, look over there. Do you see the lady who's coming in to bring her offering? She only has one tiny coin, the smallest coin there is, and you can barely hear it make a sound as she drops it in the offering plate. And then he said, there was another man who was so wealthy he needed help carrying in all of his coins. And you could hear a loud clanging sound as they dumped all the coins into the offering plate. Jesus asked the people, I wonder who gave more? Was it the lady who gave the only coin that she had? Or was it the man who had very much to give? Some people said it was the man with a lot to give, but other people said it was the lady who gave all she had. On Thursday, the temple guards said they were going to take him, but on Thursday they couldn't find him. Thursday evening, Jesus and his 12 disciples went quietly through the streets to a house that had an upper room where they would share their last meal together. After they had had all they wanted to eat and to drink, Jesus broke some bread and he said something to them like this. He said, whenever you break this bread and share it with each other, I'll be with you. And then he took a cup and he blessed it and he gave thanks to God for it. And he said, whenever you take a cup and you share it together, I'll be with you then too. What did Jesus even mean by that? They didn't understand what he was talking about. He was with them. He was always saying things like that. And they didn't understand, but they wouldn't forget. And one day they would understand. Suddenly, Judas got up and he left the table. The others finished eating and they cleaned up. They sang a hymn together, which was their custom. And then they got up and they went to the Garden of Gethsemane because Jesus wanted to pray. When he was finished praying, he came back and he joined the 12. And out of the shadows of the night, Judas came back and he kissed Jesus. That was the sign for the temple guards to take him. So they took Jesus away into the night, and then the disciples also scattered and fled. It was a confusing night. The next morning, the people took Jesus outside the city gates and they crucified him. And that afternoon, he died. They took his body to a cave where they buried him, and they rolled a big stone across the front like a seal. On Saturday, it was the quietest day the world had ever known. You could almost hear the earth breathing. On Sunday, it was the women who were brave enough to go to the tomb to be with Jesus. They wanted to be there with him, even though it was sad. But when they got to the tomb, the stone had been rolled away and the tomb was empty. He wasn't there. But somehow he was still with them, just like he is with us in the bread and the wine. Jesus had died, but now he's with us. You can't have this side without having this side too. And you can't have this side without this part here. And no matter how hard you try, you can't take them apart. And so the colors change. This is the mystery of Easter, and it makes all the difference. When we look at our story, we see that the story has a beginning and a middle and an end. And if we only had this side, then we truly would just have an end. But this side makes it different. Let's see what we can do. Now our story can go on and on. So I wonder, what's the best part of this story? What's your favorite part of this story? I wonder where you can see yourself in this story. I wonder if there's any part of this story that we can leave out and still have all the story that we need.